The first thing we're going to do is we've asked Scott Beal from Atlas Corps, who's sort of the reverse Peace Corps, to come up and do a case study, essentially, on how a new small nonprofit who's really built their business in the cloud to a large degree can really teach us, who've been around for some time, some best practices in this area. So, Scott, why don't you come on up, and you'll do a better job introducing your mission than I will. So I'll just turn it over to you to do your case study.
Great. Thank you very much, Suzanne. My name is Scott Beal. I'm with Atlas Service Corps, or Atlas Corps. It is an organization often referred to as a reverse Peace Corps. We launched in 2006 very much with this model in mind of bringing nonprofit leaders from around the world to volunteer in the United States. I left my job with the U.S. State Department, previously had worked with Ashoka, and developed this idea. I don't always use the term reverse Peace Corps, though. I once described as a reverse Peace Corps to a guy in India when I was living in New Delhi. He's like, I like the idea, but why are you against peace? Maybe change the branding on that. We're actually more of a two-way professional Peace Corps of sorts, which I'll kind of get to in the presentation, but we actually do send American mid-career professionals to volunteer abroad, as well as bringing mid-career professionals from around the world to volunteer here in the United States. I'd actually like to begin by saying that I'm not a techie. I read and tend to learn from techies and follow Holly's blog and all the very talented people who are, in fact, on this panel. Perhaps like some of you in the audience, I really didn't know what APIs were. I don't even know if I've actually said that correctly. I think I have a sense of what open source is, more or less. Open source means to me free, but actually Salesforce for foundations, for nonprofits is more or less free, so that seems open source, but I know it's not. So I'm not a techie, but what I am is a kind of a young social entrepreneur who's tried to carve a space for not only myself, but really more for the organization and what I felt was a need in the sector. So this is a brief presentation on essentially how we have used Facebook, Salesforce, and Google successfully to launch our organization, and in fact to win over $100,000 last year from online competitions. So let's see if I can. Great. So Atlas Corps is about a $500,000 nonprofit now. We started in 2006 with, 2007 with these 6 fellows, 4 from Columbia and 2 from India, volunteering in DC for 1 year at organizations like Ashoka, TechnoServe, the Grameen Foundation, smaller organizations, but equally amazing organizations like Mobilize.org and Free the Slaves. And they come to learn. They also come to contribute their knowledge. And then after 1 year, they go back home to their country and create a global network of nonprofit leaders working together. We have a small and very international and probably by any measure young staff. There's 5 of us. We're in 3 different continents on 3 different time zones. I mention young, small, and international on purpose because we're so international, we've really approached technology and thus the cloud as an integral part of how we work. It definitely creates efficiencies for us when it comes to cost and cooperation. But I actually don't think Atlas Corps could exist 10 years ago because, I mean, even simple things like Skype or a Vonage line just make our jobs much easier. So we collaborate using these tools, Facebook, Google, and Salesforce, extensively, partially because we have to. The fact that we're a young team perhaps helps when it comes to the fact that we're tech-friendly, but I would really like to say that we are not techies at all. It's basically a bunch of government and English majors, for the most part, who are running this thing, but we are comfortable. We all had Facebook pages before we decided to jump in and use Facebook for Atlas Corps. I want to briefly mention the 3 tools that are hosting today's event, and kind of, in a sense, how we've used these tools to be successful. And I like to really echo, like, obviously, we're a $500,000 organization, 5 staff, we have 12 fellows. We're not really that large of a group. And even some of these numbers aren't particularly that impressive. There's no comparisons with Stephen Colbert on his Facebook presence at all. But even with a modest presence, we've been able to promote ourselves in a pretty aggressive way and actually turn it into cash, which, you know, is king, I suppose. But we have a group and a page on Facebook, about 1,500 members. We use Causes a lot. We've actually used Causes to raise money for the organization as well. For those who don't know Causes, Causes is really simply just an application that's part of Facebook. And just like you might, join a page saying that you support Georgetown University, you can actually join a cause which says you support Atlas Corps or you support organizations that address anti-human trafficking or hunger, whatever it may be. We love Facebook because it builds community, not just among our fellows and our staff, but also among our volunteers, and it empowers them in many ways. So when we have an event, people take pictures. It's like you've hired photographers at every event that you organize, because you got a dozen people there who are taking pictures, who upload them to your page, and it's taken care of for you. You've empowered your volunteers, your staff, your team, your supporters in the broadest sense possible to promote your organization. And then those pictures get uploaded to Facebook and tagged on them, and people are like, wow, Atlas Corps, who are they? And then they may figure that out, may even join the cause. And they do fun events and have smart, talented people. I should come to their next event. We do status updates and profile pics. This is straight out of the Obama campaign. But that picture on the bottom right there is we had all of our staff and all of our team and all of our fellows, and then our volunteers started doing it, replacing their picture on Facebook with this little logo, the Atlas Corps logo. This was for a contest we did in December that says, $20,000 for Atlas Corps, all you have to do is vote. And that was their picture on their profile. And then on Facebook it tells you 30 of your friends have changed their profile picture, and you're like, well, what is this? It creates attention when attention is needed towards your cause, in this case, in these online contests. We even do it simple things like we're always very good about wishing happy birthday to our fellows and to our volunteers and to our participants and to our donors who are on Facebook. I think probably as someone who donates to my alma mater or other schools, it is kind of annoying when the only time you hear from an institution is when they're asking you for money. We're engaging them. We're actually almost more a part of their life in some odd way. We're using Twitter, which essentially is just sending out these short messages, which integrates with our status updates on Facebook. And it's not that complicated or difficult, but it gets attention towards your cause in a crowded, busy world with lots of really important things going on. This allows people to focus on something that we feel is important that's also making a difference. Google has been fantastic for us. We use it's called Google Apps. It's the education edition. It's also free. We've essentially created Atlas Corps email addresses for all of our staff and all of our even many of our volunteers and our fellows. These addresses will last forever. So even when I have alumni, they will always have an Atlas Corps email address. I remember when I worked at Ashoka, and we were discussing like how many Ashoka fellows that they were still in touch with, and it was a pretty high percentage. But the percentage of, and this is 6 years ago, so I'm sure it's changed, but the number of Ashoka fellows who they had email addresses with was an incredibly small percentage. Granted, organization, very international, almost 30 years old. But for us, for Atlas Corps, starting new, starting today in the cloud, our fellows will always have an email address that we can always reach them on, and Google allows us to do that. Not only that, they can share their events with us on our shared calendar, which we all use our Google Calendar, and we can even share documents. When people apply to be Atlas Corps Fellows, it's done online on a Google Doc, on a form that you set up. Again, I am not a programmer. And you just put this up on your site, and then we actually download that and put it straight into Salesforce. I'm so much not a programmer that I realize I should be doing this straight from Salesforce, but we're not there yet. But we haven't hired any consultants. We've just sort of learned as we went with using the cloud and how we can save money and grow our program using these tools. Oh, and the last thing, which is also part of Google, is we've used YouTube. I want to show you a video that's less than a minute long from a contest we won in January, which was the America's Giving Challenge, sponsored by the Case Foundation, where the organization that would get the most number of people to vote, or actually give you $10 or more online, would win $50,000. There's a little more complicated than that. But we got close to 1,700 people to donate over $10 for us online over about a month-long period. 800 people donated in the last 48 hours for this contest. And it was precisely because people were changing their profile pics, sending out Twitter updates, status updates, also some phone calls and things like that. And we did these YouTube videos This is not a fancy YouTube video at all, but I'll just let it play. This is the thank you video after we won. I actually could just say the words. This is me. No.